Well, good evening and welcome. I'm your host, Robert Wilson with Cowboy Wisdom. Hypnoacuity presents 7 Ways Why Cowboy Wisdom Rises Me Out of Yesterday and Opens Up Today. I grew up on a farm ranch operation in South Dakota back in the late 70s, or late 60s, early to the late 70s. And something I really have stayed attached to and adhered to is my country roots. And when I was growing up there, I'd be, man, look at all the city kids. They don't got to do this. Anyway, I went through all the hogwash of it, and that's what it was hogwash, because I didn't understand the intrinsic ingenuity of being on the farm and the ranch and of the cowboy wisdom, because we had 750 head of cows and 1,200 head of hogs. But I always thought the city kids had more freedom than I did. And they may have had more freedom, but they didn't receive the wisdom and insight I did from working with the farm implements, the tractors, the cows, the hogs. Oh, yeah, fixing fence, cleaning hog barns. Cleaning hog barns was a kind of a unique thing because during the summer we didn't have to do it very much. But in the wintertime, when it was below zero, oh, yeah. But we set it up. We had it pretty easy because we could drive tractors with dozers in there and just doze it out. The only time we ever really had to touch a pitchfork then was to move the straw around. But when I was in high school, or I guess it would be grade school, I worked for a guy and I cleaned hog barns and all the other stuff. But what I really understand now, physical labor adheres you to your talents. Yeah, it wasn't the most delicate and entertaining thing I did, but as I grew older, now I grow more. I grow with wisdom. I understand what all that did for me. And of course, when we was kids, we didn't ever come in the house and ask if there's anything to do. Oh yeah, we got to clean house, we got to clean hog barn, we got to fix fence, we got to do lots and lots of things that were not pleasant to a kid. And so we learned never to come in the house and ask what's there to do. But that's what, but as I understand now, being on the farm, there was always something to do. There was, well, you guys probably wouldn't understand this, playing King of the Mountain on a haystack. That's where one person gets on top and everybody tries to throw him off. I got quite interested when you're sliding off about a 10-foot haystack. And of course, we made sure nobody hit the ground hard. Okay, God, that was just a little lie. Not bad, but it was always to see who you could throw off the top of the haystack. We always was playing something that involved physical pain. But we'd play football, tackle football, no pads, fall off of horses, get bucked off a horse. We didn't have helmets and pads back then. Not unless you had a lot of girth on your butt. But, the thing about it is, none of us ever really got hurt bad. But maybe it's because we landed on our heads and we didn't get hurt. I don't know. But one thing I can say about growing on the farm, you got to use a lot of your innovativeness, intuitive. I mean, there was always build planes, driving tractor. Driving tractor with implements was a lot of fun. But the thing about driving tractor when you got implements, and let's say you're cultivating, that's where they don't do that now more. They spray, and it's a whole different ballgame. But back when I was a youngster, we'd cultivate. Y'all think it is just getting a tractor and drive. Well, cultivating was an interesting thing, especially the first time over. You'd go about a mile. The first time, maybe mile and a half an hour to 2 miles an hour. And you go on them half-mile roads, and you had to watch, or else you tore up the corn. And of course, wherever you tore up the corn, my uncle would drive up and ask you what was happening there. So, and the thing about that is there's no hiding it. But something I really understand, you had to watch. And what was ironic is you picked out something on the front end of that tractor and put it on a certain place on the corn row, and you just drove. And when we had half-mile rounds, that was quite boring. Then right after lunch, you'd want to, try to fall asleep. So you get out off the tractor and do things. But when you're pulling an implement, you always had to be aware of what was going on. And there was always all the rocks, they get to hit things and do things. But you had to be awakened and aware of everything going on. Watching the tractor, make sure it didn't overheat, and make sure you didn't plow out all the corn. That was a big one. But you do it for a half a mile and then turn around. And one thing, almost every day you knew for sure, the wind is going to be at your back one way or the other. And what was funny, you'd be cultivating corns that go east and west and be on the back one way or the other. Then you go to a field where it was planted north and south, the wind would change just to be your friend. And also, when you're cultivating corn, it's usually quite warm. So when if you had a side wind, it was good. But if you had a back wind, it was really very unsavory and unfriendly. Not really. You just got insulated with dirt. But the thing about farming is you had to be in tune with the surroundings of yourself, and also kind of your own meteorologist, kind of knowing when to do things and when not to do things. And you always had to, farmers are very intuitive about a lot of things. Don't worry, we was hard-headed about some things too. They were, I never was. Uh-oh, there comes that lightning bolt again. God sent down a lightning bolt to kill bullshitters, I'd have been dead right there. That's the honest God truth. I don't think there is a more hard-headed, stubborn person in the world than me. But I can admit that to me now to set myself free from it. And I catch myself at it quite literally. But then there was the combining, the harvesting. Now, them combines are a unique animal. They're neat and nice, but God was mad at the world when he made the combine. I swear. Because one thing about when you was combining, there always was a bearing somewhere in that combine that you had to tear the combine almost apart and then crawl up in there and get the bearing. Oh yeah, and the bearing was only about that big around, or maybe two of them. But you get to crawl in there on the straw walkers. They're sharp, and they made like a V like this. You get to crawl out on them, and they like to poke you. They work for AT&T. They reached out and touched you. But anyway, you crawl in there, and would never ever happen on one of the cooler days of the summer. There was a day in South Dakota that was 105 to 107 to 110. That bearing was going out that day. Because them combines like to see people sweat. I know they did. I think they was a coach way back in their life because they wanted to make you sweat when you're in the middle of the summer. But thank God for combines. That seems a lot of work. But when you're operating one, there was the feeder coming in. You had to watch for the rocks coming up so you didn't run a rock into the combine, and then you're doing that. But the thing about running machinery like that, you get in tune to listening to the machine. And as much, and weird as this sounds, but them machines, when they're operating well, they have a certain frequency that they operate at. And when you're driving them and you hear that frequency, and as soon as that frequency changes, something's up. So, and then that's one thing about farming. You got to be very intuitive to the weather because every summer is different. It starts out basically, you know, this the ground, plant the ground. It's way different now. This is back in the 70s when I was there. And you did the same thing every summer. But now it's just go out. They don't even till them. They just plant them. But the thing is you start in the spring and there's always what they call gumbo holes back in South Dakota. All they are is clay, wet clay. But if you go across them and don't break the plane, nothing happens. But if you spin your tires one time on that gumbo, you're going to the axle of that tractor. And my uncle just bought this is fun. He bought one of them internationals. I think it was I forget. It was a big 4-wheel drive V8. And I was chiseling in the spring. And of course, you get by one and you scratch the surface. If you can scratch the surface, it'll dry. So I started playing with it. Of course, you get a little more greedy and a little more courageous. I spun the wheels of that 4-wheel drive tractor. And yes, I did get it stuck. So I called my aunt. I said, Aunt Betty, you ain't going to believe this one. She says, what? I said, I got my tractor stuck. And Uncle Ray, he come driving up and said, what the heck? As soon as he saw the gumbo hole, it wasn't so bad he drove up there. But he drove up there and started laughing at me. It made his freaking day. But anyway, that's how tricky and it is. But I've been driving across a bunch of them and just putting a chisel down, let it break it so it dry out. I get a little greedy with the depth of it. So I got stuck. It was okay. It's just funny, that big tractor stuck in a mud hole. You see them big 4-wheel drives? It was about that size, but it just didn't have that horsepower. Then, you go through and then you'd put up hay in the summer for the cattle. Well, one thing that was always true on a farm and ranch operation, you was going to get heat stroke putting up the hay. And you was going to get pneumonia feeding them cows. Because you put it up 100-degree heat, you put it out anywhere from 30 above to 30 below. But there was no better life. There was just never a better life. Oh, except to a 19-year-old kid that was stupider than a post, like me. I thought there was. Well, now that I've grown wiser, I didn't say, see, I never want to grow smarter. I always want to grow wiser. And so anyway, I went to the oil field, but one thing we had was 750 head of cows and 1,200 head of hogs. And there was nothing more fun than calving cows and farrowing the hogs. And it was fun because calves, you get to go sit out there. We used a lot of horses and pickups and stuff. We'd go sit either in a pickup or on a horse and watch the calves play. God, they were fun to watch, and they were relaxing. And they'd look at you like you was silly, and they were right. But they'd play and they'd do things, and it was just fun. But you had to keep an eye on them calves in the spring because they'd get sick. And then you had to be acutely aware of what was going on with them calves. And then with the pigs, they're humorous. A bunch of little pigs are more fun to watch than anything. Well, 700, we'd have about 1,200 head of them little boogers. And they'd be fun and they'd play. But what I really liked is city kids would come out and help us feed on Sunday because we'd go to the movies in Mitchell. That's a town in South Dakota. Anyway, we'd get them in the back of the barn. Me and my cousin had grabbed a couple of them little pigs, and as soon as you picked them up, they started squealing. We'd watch them sows chase them out. Happened every week. Didn't say it was smart. We just had fun. See, that's the thing about the farm. You can have cheap fun without anybody getting hurt. But the thing about animals and livestock, you had to pay a lot of attention to what was going on because they they showed you a lot of things. And but one thing about cattle and hogs, they could tell you when a winter storm was coming. Cows would start drinking water and eating feed and all this stuff. So actually, cattle were a weather barometer. And so when you can understand this and pay attention and listen and watch and observe and witness, you got to understand your cattle. And there was nothing more fun than working cattle and stuff like that. But there, it's just, we weaned our calves. That's when you separate the calves from the moms. So we had them separated for about a day, day and a half. We had a bunch of people from the government doing a bunch of land testing, and they went through and opened all the gates and didn't close them. The cattle got mixed, but that just happens. But what was funny, what was ironic, there was a little black, white-faced calf. He was standing in the middle of the gate. Like he'd go turn his head this way and then look back. He knew he wasn't in the right place, but he just stood there for about 10 minutes. Then we realized what happened. So we just had to round them up and resort them. And that was all. See, that's because working livestock fluently opens your intuitive flow of cowboy wisdom. See, cowboy wisdom is experienced events that risen you out of your thinking and knowing mind, because you had to be aware. And if you started trying to think ahead of what they're going to do, they were going to bury you. That's why I like cowboy wisdom, because it's unattached to nothing and it's wisdom from experience. But the thing about cowboy wisdom, you're in nature, you're working with livestock, you're not inside a book. Nature is the Bible of what is the cowboy's Bible of wisdom. Because you had to be able to watch the horizons for thunderstorms. They have good thunderstorms in South Dakota and Wyoming and Washington State, but you had to be awake. And something else is we had two places 10 miles apart, and we drove our cattle 10 miles. We actually did do cattle drives 10 miles, but anyway. And in the spring, no matter what was happening, it'd be starting out a clear summer's day, and we'd be going north. You start looking over to the west, northwest, and you saw them blue clouds gather. You knew and you understood you was going to get really wet before you got the last 2 miles done. And we did every year. But that's okay. We had slickers and stuff, but it was just funny. We'd be about 2 miles from where we had to go. Then God give us our monthly shower. See, you're on a farm, you only shower once a week. No, that's not true. But anyway, it give us our monthly shower. It felt like it rained 4 inches. But it was only like a half inch, maybe quarter inch, 70, 100, somewhere in there. But man, did it rain. And, it wasn't so bad raining, but my uncle be sitting in his pickup warm and dry, laughing at us. He always liked laughing at me and my cousin, especially when stuff like that. But see, that's the thing about the cowboy wisdom. We knew we was going to get wet, but there was nothing we could do because them cows were going to go 2 to 3 miles an hour at the most, all the way. What I like most about that is my aunt used to make chili. Man, she made good chili. So it was worth getting cold and it was worth getting wet because the food at the end was great. But the thing about being the cowboy in the nature, you get a natural intuition of your own native ingenuity. And as my cowboy wisdom streams my savvy trailblazer revelations, enterprise is my animated, majestic ingenuity. Neon's my galvanizing wizardry, sprays my spirit poise. realizing everyday experiences on the farm and ranch and rise me out of yesterday. All today's experiences rise you out of today to enjoy tomorrow, to enjoy the here and now. As I realize and admit, growing up on a farm and ranching was grounding enlightenment and calming acumen, optimizing rancher far-seeing savvy to be experiencing the here and now with a wonder's wow and understanding the path of enlightenment moving onward and upward through my life as I hearken my streaming wisdom, my awakened, my individualized ingenuity streams from me through the universe, so as airways and Mother Earth's breezes of inspiration and magnetic grounding gumption. Because when you're playing with Mother Earth, you're grounded. And something I really realized by walking out in the desert like I do, I am very grounded to the desert. And it really opens me up today. As Mother Earth's and Father Sky's breezes of inspiration, innovation, imagination, intuition flows through me with boundaryless listening, imaged inspiration. As my liberating question unlocks my gamer's gumption to comprehend my life with ingenious understanding. As I am awakened and aware, fears are my subconscious mind's security guards. By admitting this to me, I am free, because admitting is the key to free me that unlocked my new now. Understanding my questionnaire flare illuminates the illusions of my fears, sending me to pure liberation. As I stop trying to heal the past, liberate the now, I really understand cowboy wisdom is of the here and now, because you're in nature. You're out in the middle of nowhere. You're out in the prairie. You're working cattle, but you're feeling you're grounded to earth, and it's a freedom and a sovereignty you never understand until you're riding that horse out in the middle of nowhere. And see, life is like riding that horse in the middle of nowhere. We think we know where we're at, but we never understand what is going on around us. You think you know your way to yesterday. Today is a trend-setting optimism dawning. Adventurous yazza pizzazz to jazz up your life with your own cowboy wisdom. To ride the tides of trend-setting imagination, dawning, enterprising wizardry to set yourself free from you. And that's what, when you understand this, cowboy wisdom is understanding I liberate me from me. My viewpoints, opinions, and belief I taught myself from my parents' society opens my eyes to witness and observe the world as a sovereign paradise for me to play. And I want to thank you. I am Robert Allen Wilson with Cowboy Wisdom Hypnoacuity, and a published author and the Cowboy Wisdom Podcast. And I want to thank you, and good night.